Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. We welcome our friends in South Africa, the United States, and around the world to this week's edition of A Conversation with El-Hajj Mauri Saalakhan. I'm pleased to be your host, coming to you once again through the Salam Media Network out of Johannesburg, South Africa. Salam Media is an online portal for humanitarian journalism. We don't just report the news, we advise you on what you can do about it. Today's broadcast is titled Focus on Sudan. Those of you who are familiar with the work of El-Hajj Mauri Saalakhan, you know that, and if you've been with me for a number of years, you know that not too long ago, I authored a book titled Target Sudan, What's Really Behind the Crisis in Darfur. This book came out at the height of the crisis that was going on at the time in that part of the Sudan. And that was my, I guess you could call it a formal entryway into becoming aware of and somewhat of an advocate around that crisis. It's so unfortunate that this land that has been a country, one of the largest territories on the African continent, a territory that has the capacity, when it's in a healthy state, to, be the breadbasket for the world, has nevertheless been just embroiled in one man-made tragedy after another. This tortured land, with an estimated population of 53 million people, has just entered the fourth year of what is described as a civil war between two self-centered belligerents. And this is what they are. And their respective enablers, who are motivated by two things and two things only: greed and power. Let us begin today's broadcast with some sacred ayat, verses from the final divinely sent revelation to all of humanity, the noble Quran. These verses come from the 63rd surah or chapter of the Quran, known as Al-Munafiqun, or the hypocrites. They were revealed to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, after his migration to Medina. These verses are highly relevant to today's program. They read in translation of the meaning as follows: In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. When the hypocrites come to you, O Prophet, they say, we bear witness that you are certainly the messenger of Allah. And surely Allah knows that you are his messenger. But Allah bears witness that the hypocrites are truly liars. They have made their false oaths as a shield, hindering others from the way of Allah, evil indeed is what they do. This is because they believed and then abandoned faith. Therefore, their hearts have been sealed, so they do not comprehend. When you see them, their appearance impresses you. And when they speak, you listen to their impressive speech. But they are just like worthless planks of wood leaned against the wall. They think everyone is against them. They are the enemy, so beware of them. May Allah condemn them. How can they be deluded from the truth? When it is said to them, "Come," the messenger of Allah will pray for you to be forgiven. They turn their heads in disgust, and you see them, O Prophet, turn away in arrogance. It is the same whether you pray for their forgiveness or not. Allah will not forgive them. Surely Allah does not guide the rebellious people. They are the ones who say to one another, "Do not spend anything on those immigrants," with the messenger of Allah, so that they will break away from him. But to Allah alone belong the treasures of the heavens and the earth. Yet the hypocrites do not comprehend. They say, "If we return to Medina, the honorable will definitely expel the inferior." But all honor and power belongs to Allah, His messenger, and the believers. Yet the hypocrites do not know. O believers, do not let your wealth or your children divert you from the remembrance of Allah. For whoever does so, it is they who are the true losers. And donate from what we have provided for you before death comes to one of you, and you cry, "My Lord, if only you delay me for a short while, I would give in charity and be one of the righteous." But Allah never delays a soul when its appointed time has come. And Allah is all aware of what you do. Now, having set the tone for today's broadcast, let's go to a commercial break and resume our program on the other side. Let's go to a commercial, Brother Sadiq.
When you give water, you bring life to drought-affected communities, providing fresh water for drinking, cleaning, and growing. Your support helps Islamic Relief implement water, sanitation, and hygiene projects, providing clean water to communities around the world. Donate now to Islamic Relief.
You know, it's a wonder how kids get anything done these days. With all the distractions, when do they even get time to study? As a mother, all I can really do is make sure they have all they need to perform at their best. That's why I choose to include Sunfoil triple refined pure sunflower oil with every meal I make. Naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether I'm cooking, frying, or baking, I know every dish will be a wholesome one. Sunfoil, now we're cooking.
Elite Basmati, available throughout the Middle East, and now for the very first time exclusive to South Africa. Brought to you by Murchison Spice, Pietermaritzburg's most famous specialty store. Elite Basmati, available in aromatic white and golden cellar, is packaged in a world-class facility in India and is filled with wholesome goodness for your well-being. Elite Basmati rice by Murchison Spice. For trade inquiries, contact Mohammed on 033 387 2121. Murchison Spice.
It's a new beginning. It's a new era. Salam Media, humanitarian journalism.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, our focus today is on Sudan. There's a short piece of video, courtesy of Al Jazeera, that we would like for you to see. It provides a little background information that will enable our listeners and viewers to better understand how we got to where we are today in that tortured part of the world. Let's see the video, Brother Saalakhan.
War in the clearest way I can. It's a huge country with around 50 million people, and it's being ripped apart by a brutal conflict that's created the largest humanitarian crisis since records began. There are two main rival sides, and control of the country is basically split between them. The Sudanese Armed Forces, or SAF, control the east, north, and center, including the capital, Khartoum. They're led by General Burhan. And the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, control a large area in the west. They're a paramilitary group led by this man, who's known as Hemeti. With the way things are going, some people think this split could end up becoming permanent. And Sudan's actually been split before, when South Sudan seceded and became its own country in 2011.
This big concern and big fear that we're looking at Sudan once again dividing itself.
Now, Sudan is super diverse. There are lots of different ethnicities and tribes.
I think more than 500, and some identify as Arabs, like originally from Arab tribes, and some are identified to be African, which are closer to sub-Saharan African tribes. This is also a product of British colonization, this creation of these African identities versus Arab identities.
And that division is one of the dynamics that's playing out in this war. To understand how, you need to know about Omar al-Bashir. He was an authoritarian leader who ruled Sudan for 30 years from the late 1980s. While he was president, Bashir, who's from a Sudanese Arab tribe, was accused of favoring Arab communities from areas in the north and near the capital, giving them top positions in the state and the army, for example. That created resentment among non-Arab, or what are sometimes referred to as African communities, which are mostly concentrated in regions further away.
There has been, historically speaking, a lot of marginalization of African tribes by the elites who are mostly belong to, like, quote-unquote Arab tribes from Khartoum.
Now, in 2003, some non-Arab groups in the western region of Darfur launched an armed rebellion against Bashir's Arab-dominated government. Bashir responded by funding militias from Arab communities in Darfur to fight the rebels. Those militias were known as the Janjaweed. Side note, the Arab communities that the Janjaweed came from were predominantly nomadic herders, whereas non-Arab groups in Darfur were typically settled farmers. And there was already competition and conflict between those communities over land and water. Bashir was accused of exploiting those divisions by arming the Janjaweed. The Janjaweed went on to carry out a genocide against Darfur's non-Arab communities, killing around 300,000 people and setting fire to entire villages. In 2013, Bashir's government rebranded the Janjaweed as the Rapid Support Forces, with Hemeti as their leader. So that's how the RSF came about. Remember, they're one of the two main sides in the current war. The RSF were essentially a paramilitary force under the president's control, but separate to the official army, the Sudanese Armed Forces. That's the other main player in today's war. So the RSF and SAF were essentially on the same side. They were both part of Sudan's security system under President Bashir. Then, in 2019, this happened. There were big pro-democracy protests against Bashir's government. Within a few months, the army and the RSF turned on Bashir and removed him from power. It was a huge moment in Sudan.
It's like a football match.
We're trying to get up high to show you exactly how many people are here. It's completely extraordinary.
After Bashir was gone, there was a tense transitional period when power was supposed to be shared between representatives of the protesters who wanted a civilian-led democratic government and the military leadership, which had Burhan at the top and Hemeti as number two.
There was finally a very unique window of opportunity to move towards democracy, but it was a chance that was stolen from the people of Sudan by the Rapid Support Forces and by the Sudan Armed Forces, who refused to let go.
All right, we're breaking into this program to take you live to Khartoum.
In 2021, the military, under Burhan, made a power grab and abandoned the power-sharing deal with the civilian groups.
And it's really the coup of 2021 that led us down this road to war.
A power struggle then developed between Burhan and Hemeti, especially over plans to merge the RSF into the Sudanese armed forces.
Obviously, this is something that would have threatened Hemeti's power.
The disagreements between them became so much by April of 2023 that they both thought that the only way to figure this out was to eliminate the other.
And that's how the war started. First in Khartoum, then spilling into other parts of the country. Tens of thousands of people have been killed and more than 12 million people have been displaced. Both sides have targeted civilians. Sexual violence is being used as a weapon of war. There have been outbreaks of famine, and nowhere near enough aid is getting in.
This war has just brought nothing but heartbreak, nothing but loss, nothing but, death.
It's been especially violent in Darfur and areas of Western Sudan, where the RSF has been trying to consolidate its power. It now controls the whole of Darfur and has been pushing east. There have been intense battles between SAF and the RSF in North and West Kordofan. And as the RSF has taken more and more territory, we've seen a horrific pattern of atrocities carried out by its fighters. The RSF have cut off food and water supplies to cities, trapping thousands of people. There have been massacres of non-Arab communities in places like El-Geneina, where the UN says up to 15,000 people were killed. And more recently, we've seen targeted killings in El-Fasher. RSF fighters have even been posting videos of their killings online.
So I'm in a bus station turned into a displacement camp for people coming from El-Fasher. Just like one horror story after another, one depressing story after another.
القتل فيه الجثث فيه
لأنه بتلقى جثث واقع جثث بتاعت ناس جثث بتاعت أطفال ملابس بتاعت ناس مدغولات مستندات بتاعت ناس مدغولة في الشارع يعني الشارع والله تقدر تقول زي الأفلام المخيفة دي يعني.
And remember, the RSF emerged from the Janjaweed, the group that committed genocide against the same tribes in the same region 2 decades ago.
One way I've heard someone describe it is that they are just doing the job they started in the early 2000s. They are just completing the genocide they began.
In fact, the US has already declared that the RSF's actions in Darfur since 2023 amount to genocide. Now, after those videos emerged of RSF fighters executing people in El-Fasher, the RSF leader Hemeti said there would be an investigation, and one commander was arrested. But many analysts see it as a PR stunt.
A form of twisted accountability, performative accountability, where one commander is essentially arrested, but the thousands of militiamen that were involved in the onslaught on El-Fasher essentially walk away scot-free.
I don't think anyone sees any credible pathway to accountability through the RSF.
Now, another aspect to this war is the role of outside players who are providing political support and in some cases weapons to the competing sides. One of SAF's main backers is Egypt.
For the Egyptian government, their interest is to have a modicum of stability in Sudan, and in that they draw on a government, or the last kind of legalized government that you have, which is the Sudan Armed Forces.
But mostly it relies in terms of weaponry on Turkey and Iran, and as well as Egypt.
On the RSF side, one of the main players is the United Arab Emirates, the UAE,
which denies support to the RSF, but is well known to be the RSF's main backer.
The RSF relies mainly on the United Arab Emirates for political and military support, but it also relies on a network of different states and sort of authorities in the region surrounding Sudan that are very close to or allied to the United Arab Emirates.
A report from Amnesty International found that the conflict is being fueled by an almost unimpeded supply of weapons to both forces. It found evidence of weapons from Turkey, Russia, Serbia, China, Yemen, and the UAE. Keep in mind, there is supposed to be an international ban on sending weapons and ammunition to Darfur because a UN arms embargo has been in place since 2004. Another thing fueling the war in Sudan is gold, which both sides are using to fund their fight, to buy weapons and supplies like food and fuel. Gold can be found all over Sudan. It's a multi-billion-dollar trade and the most significant source of income for both SAF and the RSF. Sudan borders 7 other countries, and it's thought that gold is being moved out through many of them.
So we have other armed groups, producers, traders, smugglers, neighboring governments much further afield, and this makes a real network or networks that come together to sustain the war.
So this war has evolved well beyond a feud between two generals. There are billions of dollars worth of commodities at stake and so many players. And now we're looking at both sides trying to entrench their authority in places they control. Both SAF and the RSF have actually set up rival governments in Port Sudan and Niala.
It's just really important to stress that none of these two governments have full legitimacy. One of them was born out of a coup against the civilian government and the aspirations of the revolution, and the other one, came out of mass killing and murder and ethnic cleansing of the Sudanese people.
I often talk about this not as a civil war, but a counter-revolutionary war, a war against civilians, a war punishing civilians for the audacity of trying to have, their own kind of government.
There has been diplomacy going on to try to bring an end to the war, at least to pause fighting and get aid to people. That's been led by a group of countries known as the Quad, the US, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. But attempts to reach a diplomatic solution so far haven't succeeded.
There are talks of a peace agreement between the army and the RSF, but when you look at the time that this mediation comes and you look at the map, if such mediation or such a peace materializes, then the RSF is not going to want to give up its area of control. If you already have power, why share it with someone else?
We recently went to Syria to make a film on how the country is fighting for justice after more than 50 years of dictatorship and war. You can watch it here.
Alhamdulillah, that was a very important piece of video, again, coming to us courtesy of Al Jazeera, English. I should note that the emphasis on tribalism, Arab versus African, is one of the divide and conquer legacies of European and specifically British colonialism. That's where that stems from. The irony is that all Sudanese are African. The only thing that determines the so-called Arab distinction is the tongue. The so-called Arab tribes speak Arabic. But if you had a group of Sudanese in front of you, some from an Arab tribe and some from an African tribe, you would not be able to determine which is from which by looking at them. Again, the determination is the tongue. And again, this is a division that has that was exploited. It was magnified, exploited, engineered to a large extent by the British and their colonial campaigns on the continent. And they were not the only ones who engaged in these types of divide and conquer, divide and rule, divide and subjugate agendas. Other colonial powers did so as well. Some of you may remember the presentation I did last year on Siham Hassan Hassaballah, a former Sudanese member of parliament, a humanitarian and human rights activist. She was reportedly executed by rapid support forces by this militia in El-Hajj in North Darfur as a prominent figure and the youngest woman ever elected to Sudan's parliament. Her killing was part of an escalating campaign of violence by the RSF following their seizure of the city. These are the murderous criminals being heavily supported by the United Arab Emirates. We have another important piece of video that our viewers should see. This one comes courtesy of Democracy Now! It's a very important interview that just took place this past Thursday. This broadcast aired. So without any further ado, Brother Sadiq, let's see that piece of video.
democracynow.org. I'm Nermeen Sheikh with Amy Goodman. The ongoing civil war in Sudan enters its fourth year today, creating what the United Nations calls the world's worst humanitarian crisis. The country has been engulfed in civil war since April 2023, when fighting erupted between the Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, and the Paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or RSF. The war quickly drew in local militias as well as foreign powers. The United Arab Emirates, in particular, has been accused of aiding the RSF. The U.S. government and a UN fact-finding mission have accused RSF and allied fighters of committing genocide.
The death toll from 3 years of war remains unclear. The National Health Ministry says 11,000 civilians have been killed, but some estimates are as high as 400,000. Nearly 34 million people in the country need humanitarian assistance, according to the United Nations. A new report from the Norwegian Refugee Council says in the two areas hit hardest by the conflict, North Darfur and South Kordofan, millions of people get only one meal a day, if any. On Thursday, international leaders meeting in Berlin pledged $1.5 billion for humanitarian aid in Sudan. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, quote, "This nightmare must end," and called for an immediate end to hostilities. The French foreign minister spoke at the meeting.
Today, I want to speak to the people of Sudan, to the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces. I say this once again, there is an alternative to war. You must publicly commit to the path of negotiation and peace, starting by agreeing to the ceasefire proposed by the Quad. Together with its partners, France stands ready to contribute to a monitoring and verification mechanism to ensure its implementation.
That was French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot. The International Sudan Conference in Berlin was supposed to help revive faltering negotiations to end the fighting, but the two sides fighting the war were excluded. The Sudanese foreign minister criticized Western leaders for not coordinating with Khartoum, describing the conference as a, quote, colonial tutelage approach. For more on Sudan, we're joined now by Khulud Khair, a Sudanese political analyst and head of Confluence Advisory, a think tank founded in Khartoum. She joins us today from Nairobi. Welcome back to the show, Khulud. If you could just share your reflections on these 3 years of war in Sudan, and also your response to this Berlin conference that's ongoing.
So, the war in Sudan has really, plunged the country, and more importantly, its civilians, into just the depths of hell. We have seen that it's not just become the world's largest humanitarian crisis, as the UN points out, but also the world's largest hunger crisis, the world's largest displacement crisis, and the world's largest sexual violence crisis. But this war is, not just fought on the bodies of civilians by happenstance. It's not incidental to the fighting. It is precisely the point. This war is a war of succession between the SAF and the RSF, who want to inherit the military security state of former dictator Omar al-Bashir. And they're doing so in large part, not just by fighting each other, but also by diminishing as much as possible the revolutionary fervor and the calls for civilian democratic rule in Sudan. They're doing this by effectively fighting a war against civilians, ensuring that, as a UN report today said, that 71% of the country is below the poverty line, that you have Sudan's production capacity dwindling by 90% in just 3 years. And things seem set to get worse, particularly as the agricultural season, which many will rely on to stave off the food insecurity and famine, is likely to fail as a result of growing fuel and fertilizer prices owing to the war in the Gulf. When it comes to the Berlin conference, it very much set out to really focus attention on what is happening to civilians. So there was a component about the humanitarian impact of this war, alongside a pledging conference for the humanitarian aid, which, as you said, raised $1.5 billion. There was a ministerial conference also to recommit from the international community some level of, commitment towards a ceasefire. And most importantly for me, there was an element of it that was about getting different civilians from different walks of life, from different political backgrounds together. And this is really the thing that both the Sudanese Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces object to. They don't just object to not being invited, they object to the fact that civilians are being centered rather than they themselves, when they themselves have multiple platforms in which they can get global attention. What they're really afraid of here is that Sudanese civilians will come together precisely as a result of this war and create a lot of international pressure for the war to end. And so what they've been doing on the ground in real time is militarizing society in Sudan, militarizing the economy, and basically ensuring that a lot of people who want access to resources, who want access to services, and who want access to livelihoods and money, pick up a gun to do so. That what they're hoping to do is, by militarizing the context in Sudan, that any calls for civilian democratic rule are pushed to the wayside.
Khulud Khair, the United Nations World Food Program reports that close to 25 million people are suffering from acute hunger. 2 million face famine or risk of famine. How has the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran and the disruption of the Strait of Hormuz exacerbated food insecurity in the Gulf, and also talk about the role of the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, in supporting the RSF, the Rapid Support Force, the Rapid Sudan Forces?
So what we have right now is that it's April. Next month in May is generally the planting season. Then you have the rainy season from late June to late September. Thereafter, you have the harvest. And so what is needed right now in April is fuel for any kind of mechanical equipment required for farming, as well as agricultural inputs like fertilizer, seeds, and others. right now, because of the issues around the Strait of Hormuz, but also the hit to natural gas production, which produces a lot of the byproducts, including fertilizer, what you have is in Sudan an inability to get access to those agricultural inputs. Just in the past few weeks, as the impact of the fuel shortages has hit, we have seen vast queues in Sudan for petrol as well as for diesel and other fuels. What we also have in Sudan is that the exchange rate for the US dollar is on the black market is pegged to the price of oil. And so as the price of oil skyrockets, so too does the value of the dollar against the pound. This means that inflation is going through the roof. And so whatever food is already available has become out of reach for very many people. And because we don't see any end in sight for the tensions around the Strait of Hormuz, and actually conversely, we see perhaps a spreading of the tensions to the Red Sea, which Sudan is a literal state of, there could also be serious issues around Sudan getting access to whatever fuel is available through the Red Sea into Port Sudan. What this means is that Sudan is effectively being choked by two different straits, and at this a very critical point in the agricultural season. We also have a political fallout from the war in the Middle East. What we saw recently was that the United States government has designated the Muslim Brotherhood of Sudan as a foreign terror organization, and this FTO designation makes a very clear link in its wording to the relationship between the Muslim Brotherhood to Iran and the IRGC in Iran. Now, the timing of this suggests that it falls very much into the broader scope of conflict that is taking place in the Gulf, and the Sudan may now be sucked much more into the conflict that's going on in the Gulf that is not just merely between Iran on the one side and the UAE and Israel on the other side, but also that what we have here is that the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces are effectively being placed into these two camps. So the Sudanese armed forces is being placed into the camp of Iran, while the rapid support forces is being placed, of course, into the camp of Israel via the UAE. And what this means is that this war in Sudan, which is very much a domestic national issue around, as I said, a war of succession for the security and military state, is around the resources in Sudan, could increasingly become much more of a proxy war. This means that any resolution to the war can also be taken out of Sudanese hands. And this means that Sudan is going to be plunged further into a conflict that has so far, we see no sort of signs of abating.
Khulud, before we conclude, could you just say something also about the region, Sudan's neighbors? You've said that there's not a single one of Sudan's neighbors that are not in some way involved or invested in the war.
Sudan has 7 neighbors, all of which it shares very porous borders with. And what we have seen is that the Western neighbors of Sudan, whether that's Libya, Chad, the Central African Republic, all 3 have been implicated in reporting of supply lines coming through those countries into Darfur for the RSF, originating from the UAE, according to reporting out there. What we've also seen is that recently Reuters reporting on Ethiopia having some of its bases being used by the RSF, as well as parts of South Sudan being used as a staging ground for some of the RSF attacks in the southeasterly region of Blue Nile. At the same time, we have Eritrea to the east of Sudan, which has been reportedly training militias close to and allied to the Sudanese armed forces, and Egypt similarly also hosting some military assets close to the Sudanese border, and at the same time bombing some of these weapon supply lines in southeastern Libya. There are also some reports that the Egyptians have used American-made F-16s also in some of the campaigns in, for example, the capital Khartoum. And so in some way or other, all of these countries are involved in either allowing space for weapons transfers or actively engage in training or military operations. You also have the fact that a lot of Sudanese are displaced to some of these countries, and there are some serious security concerns about the status of Sudanese in these countries, most notably in Egypt, where we have seen many Sudanese refugees, even those carrying UNHCR refugee cards, being detained by the Egyptian authorities, and some of whom have died in detention. This, of course, without a peep from the Sudanese armed forces allied to them in Sudan. So what you have is, Sudan's people being displaced to these countries being actively engaged to some lesser or greater degree in the war. And at the same time, you have Sudan's resources coming out of Sudan, almost always illegally being smuggled into these countries, whether it's Egypt or Chad or South Sudan, with a lot of Sudanese products, for example, like gum arabic, very essential for the food and pharmaceutical industry, being labeled as products of those countries. Gold, of course, has been also smuggled through some of these countries, adding a lot of economic buffers to those countries themselves, and then being exported elsewhere. And really none of that money reaching Sudanese people who, as I've said earlier, are under very, very dire economic constraints as a result of the war. What this means is that really none of Sudan's neighbors can be counted upon to be arbiters of this conflict, or indeed champions for peace if they are profiting from it in more ways than one.
Khulud Khair, thank you so much for joining us, a Sudanese political analyst and head of Confluence Advisory, a think tank founded in Khartoum.
Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.
First of all, I want to thank Democracy Now! For that very important report, that interview that took place this past week. And again, also thank Al Jazeera for the report they did a few months back that we were able to see in today's broadcast. It provides us with very important perspective on what's been going on for the past 3 years. We have now just marked the entry into the 4th year of this crisis, and it's one that has not received as much attention as it deserves. Part of the reason is that, at least from my end, is that it's been a difficult time for me trying to identify Sudanese that are willing, to come on and talk about the crisis. And I can understand why there is a bit of apprehension. I mean, there is so much oppression, internal Sudanese on Sudanese oppression connected to this now going into its 4th year crisis. And it's really heartbreaking. Again, this is a country that years ago had and still has the potential of being able to be the breadbasket for the world. And yet the overwhelming majority of the population in Sudan is at risk of starvation. I saw a report just the other day where in certain parts of the Sudan, because of the way they have been cut off by these belligerent forces, subhanAllah, the Sudanese have been reduced to eating animal feed. They're becoming ill, and some of them dying from eating animal feed. Human Rights Watch has issued a report on the RSF's crimes against the Sudanese people. And again, the principal supporter, not the sole supporter, but the principal supporter of the RSF is the United Arab Emirates. it's sad. There's a report that it's a Wall Street Journal report that I came across the other day that I strongly recommend that those who are interested in getting additional information read. Do I have the title here of it? Let me see. I thought I did, but I don't see it right now. But it's a very important report. I will find a link and put it in the comment section, inshallah ta'ala. But the bottom line that we need for folk to be aware of who are seeing this broadcast is the fact, and this is not speculation, this is a fact. The Sudanese Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces, the SAF and the RSF, they are a malignant cancer on the Sudanese people. They and their affiliates are not practicing Muslims. This is a predominantly Muslim populated country, and these belligerents are supposed to be Muslims, but they are not practicing Muslims. In fact, I came across some information concerning the this term, this name, Janjaweed. It's quite interesting. The translation of Janjaweed is devil on horseback. That's how it translates. Devil on horseback. And subhanAllah, this is a description that fits both of these belligerents that have just brought nothing but tremendous hardship upon their own people. It's really, really sad. Brother Sadiq, let's go to a final commercial, and then inshallah ta'ala there's some closing perspective that inshallah ta'ala I want to share when we come back to close out the broadcast with. Let's go to the commercial.
When the perfect blend of stylish decor, exquisite halal cuisine, and warm hospitality come together, it could only mean Al-Bayt Lodge, your true home away from home. Al-Bayt is the ideal heaven for families, business people, and tourists with its 4-star family rooms and other luxurious facilities, conveniently situated close to Port Elizabeth Airport, the beach, and other amenities. Your stay will be truly unforgettable, as you'll be taking home lasting memories of the warm hospitality, the serenity and tranquility that Al-Bayt has to offer. For reservations, call 041 583 6415 or visit www.albaytlodge.co.za.
Valley's Motor Spares. We supply motor spares and accessories for all makes and models of motor cars, LDVs, bakkies, trucks, and earth-moving equipment. We deliver on time, every time. Please contact us via WhatsApp on 014-592-0925 or call 014-592-0925 or visit 28 Zenderling Street, Rustenburg. Remember the name, Valley's Motor Spares.
Golf for a Cause. Join us for Africa Muslims Agency's inaugural Charity Golf Day in Johannesburg on Sunday, 19th April at the pristine Royal Johannesburg Golf Club. Tee off for hope. as we raise funds for the Oman School of Excellence based in Johannesburg South, providing world-class education in an impoverished community. Whether you're a beginner or pro, everyone is welcome to join our golfing journey in service of humanity. Great sponsorship opportunities available for businesses and 1,500 Rand per player. Contact the AMA Houghton office for more information.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Needless to say, first of all, welcome back. Again, if you're just joining us for the final minutes of today's broadcast, our focus today was on Sudan. And this has been a very, preparing for this was very difficult, very challenging, very weighty preparation for today's broadcast. It's really heartbreaking. What adds to the heartbreak is that these are supposed to be Muslims. These are Muslims doing this to Muslims. Not just the frontline belligerents, the RSF and the SAF, not just them, but those who are aiding and abetting them. And it's not just the United Arab Emirates. It's not just the UAE. There are a number of other countries that are in the mix as well. But the UAE it has a heavy hand in what has been taking place. And, those of us who like to travel to these Gulf countries, these wealthy Gulf countries for vacation, and writing back in social media and through various other organs how nice it was, how enjoyable it was. I mean, we really need to take stock of what countries like this are doing and the role that we are playing in facilitating this kind of madness. They should be boycotted. The Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, she has called for a boycott of the United Arab Emirates. And I agree. Yes, it should be boycotted. There should be sanctions. Now, she has called for sanctions on the United Arab Emirates. And I agree, there should be sanctions. That report, that Wall Street Journal report that I referred to a few moments ago is titled, How UAE Arms Bolstered a Sudanese Militia Accused of Genocide. Again, how UAE arms bolstered a Sudanese militia accused of genocide. And there's a lot of detailed information in that report. On a final note, there's a certain non-African American Muslim intellectual. He's an American. He's a Caucasian American Muslim who spends most of his time, if I understand correctly, in the UAE. And it's sad. There are some who refer to him, and I'm not going to mention his name in this broadcast, but I'm quite certain that many who hear this critique will know who it is I'm referring to. There is a tendency sometimes to hear some of our Muslim brethren compare him to El-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, Malcolm X. Subhanallah. A'udhu billah. Let me be clear. Let me be absolutely clear. This brother is no Malcolm X. And this fact is clearly self-evident by the position he has taken on the war on the Islamic Republic of Iran, on Israel and this government's, our government's war on Iran. Not to mention his kind of not so subtle defense of the Emirates and some of the other wealthy countries in that region. To my brothers and sisters in Islam, especially the young, don't allow yourselves to be seduced by the gift of gab. Malcolm was not only known for his eloquence in speech, but most importantly, for his courageous and principled stand on the challenging issues of his time. So don't get it twisted. Be careful about who you compare to this beloved martyr of ours. I'm going to end the broadcast on that note and go out as we normally do with Surah Al-Asr. But before we do, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring relief to our suffering brothers and sisters in the Sudan. May Allah ta'ala bring relief to our brothers and sisters in occupied Palestine, in Lebanon, in Yemen, in occupied Kashmir, those who are suffering from oppressive conditions in India, our brothers and sisters who are struggling, to try to keep their head above oppressive waters in Somalia, and all other parts of the Muslim world. May Allah Ta'ala also bless, with relief, bring relief to our brothers and sisters in Cuba. That right now Cuba is off the radar, but our Cuban brethren, they're suffering. They are suffering. And may Allah Ta'ala bless us to become as sensitive as we can possibly come, active or action-oriented sensitivity around these issues. And for those of us who are in countries like America and other parts of the West who have more freedom to act, to speak, to make a difference, may Allah Ta'ala bless us to utilize that freedom to do just that, to make a positive difference. I close out as we normally do. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wal Asr. Innal insana lafi kusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amalu salihati. Wa tawassaw bil haqq. Wa tawassaw bis sabr. which means, in the translation of the meaning, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, by the token of time through the ages, surely humanity is in loss, except those who believe and do good, and exhort one another to truth, and exhort one another to patiently persevere. Peace be unto you. Assalamu alaikum.